Hello, my fellow readers. I'm Dark Symphony 777 with another fan fiction review. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like, subscribe to the subscribe to the channel. Click on that bell for notifications. Leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts of the story, any future fan fictions you want me to read or review, as well as any miscellaneous stuff, whatever you want. And as always, this story is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of everyone in the world. So the last review I did was a fan fiction called Storm Warning. It was written by Jay Winger. It was an old school wrestling fan fiction that I really love, and I still love to this day. It's kind of aged badly, but it still has some charm. This story I'm reviewing, it's the sequel, Raging Storm. My honest opinions before I get into the nitty gritty about the stuff. I think it did better in some certain circumstances than Storm Warning, but at the same time, it did stuff kind of worse. So we kind of had a little balancing act here. So let's get to the review. So the review starts off about a bit after the events of the last chapter of Storm Warning, which was the single chapter breakdown. Storm is he's just still being the psychotic asshole he is when a new guy shows up in WWF named Billy Rose. So apparently Billy Rose and the Storm, or by his real name Matthew Skinner, have a bit of history. Billy Rose pretty much tortured him. I have to at least describe this a little bit. So the backstory for these two guys is Billy Rose created this little independent wrestling company called CIW. It was supposed to be I guess you can say an imaginary, because it's a fan fiction, it's a story, an imaginary sort of erats of ECW. I guess nowadays, if you want to do a real life counterpart, you got Combat Zone Wrestling, ZZW, famous for Jesus. I don't know why I thought of that. Where Billy Rose was trying to be even more hardcore to ECW, to the point he was actually borderline torturing anyone he didn't like, which included the Storm. So we got Storm turning face, Billy Rose a heel from the get-go, despite the fact it really doesn't look like it. I'll get more into the details of that when I get into the characters, because I think Billy Rose was completely bungled as a antagonist. And so the story is basically just one gigantic storyline of Storm getting his revenge for all the crap not only Billy Rose did to him, but for everyone who technically worked under him in CIW, because Rose owned the company. He was the booker. He was the guy who was in charge of everything, and he let the power go to his head. And so we got a bunch of basically Storm and Billy going to war with all these other wrestlers, stuff like that. And it ends with Hell in a Cell. Good God, what a way to end that story. Okay, so on to the characters. First off, we have the Storm. Storm starts out psychotic. He still starts out as a heel because, we're going by the end of the last story. He technically ended as a heel in that story, so he started as a heel here. But once Billy Rose, he went into a tweener role, but then turned into a face. For those of you who don't know, just in case you didn't watch the first video, heel means bad guy, face means good guy, and tweener kind of means in the middle. Like Stone Cold Steve Austin, he was a tweener. Billy Rose, then we have Claire Whitaker, aka Rain. Rain is sort of like Storm's girlfriend, and I didn't really talk about her much in the last story because she didn't really show up until the very end, where it didn't really matter. And I felt it would be more safe to talk about her in this video because she's here from start to end, and she's like the polar opposite of Storm. She's the one who keeps trying to calm him down, try and keep him sane from going full on murderer. I like the interactions. They do have a lot of good. Mr. Winger did in fact pay a lot of good attention to how their interactions work. It made them look like a real couple in the confines of a wrestling storyline. So we got that. Then we have Stone Cold Steve Austin. Stone Cold Steve Austin is Stone Cold Steve Austin. You want me to kick this guy? Give me a hell yeah, hell yeah. And I love Steve Austin. He ain't Chris Jericho, but I love Steve Austin. Yeah. Then we have Billy Rose, and this is where we got the good part. On one side, we got the good part, and then on the bad side. the author completely bungled Billy Rose's character. I think at the beginning we had Billy Rose was at least a certain twist on the wrestling archetype of the chicken shit heel, the cowardly heel who constantly runs away at every single opportunity because they admit they kind of don't want to admit defeat. The closest analogy you have to modern day WWE would be Mike the Miz Mizianian, or Mizan, or how do you pronounce his last name? The Miz, whatever you want to call him. And I think the Miz is like the perfect chicken shit heel. I think he's like the best heel to ever have that character because he has the mic work to back it up enough that he can kind of recover as much as he can. But I like the twist at the beginning with Rose being a sort of specific chicken shit heel who was slimy and smart enough to realize, oh, Storm wants my head, and so he only does the chicken chicken shit heel tactics on Storm to rile him up to as a form of psychological warfare, which I thought was a nice twist on the formula. I mean, you have these types of wrestlers who constantly run away from everything, so having one only run away from one specific wrestler, and not as a way to say, haha, you can't beat me, but more as a way to piss the other guy off because he's so hell-bent on getting his hands on him to the point he might get deranged and you might actually be able to one-up him. That's at least a good idea, but then the author completely bungers it over the course of the story by making him more and more of a joke until we get to the Hell in a Cell. I'll get more about the Hell in a Cell later when I talk about my favorite part. Spoiler alert, it's that. Grammar is nice. There's nothing wrong with the grammar. Should I go back to... Nah, I'll keep going. Going back to the grammar. The grammar's fine. There's nothing really wrong with the grammar. Except for one chapter. Not even the entire, where is it? I gotta go, here we go. This one? It's not even one part. It's literally specific of the entire, where is it? I'm sorry, I'm trying to find, let's see. Because for some reason... Oh yeah, here. This problem is only really exclusive on the regular app. Yeah. Like, if you're watching it if you read it on the app, then you don't see the problem. But when you read it on the actual full site, I kid you not, what the hell? What is up with this? Hey, come here. I'm at my friend's house. Here, I want you to see something real quick. Hey. I want you to come here and see this real quick.
Sure.
I'm at my friend Agent X's house. I want her to see this to prove that this is just a pure what the fuck moment. Just a pure, what is up with this?
Sure.
Just look.
Okay. What's up?
Literally the entire chapter is like this.
Oh my god, it's underlined?
All the chapter 16 is underlined. It doesn't seem to have a problem on the app, but when you go on the actual site and go on this specific chapter, it's like, literally the entire chapter is underlined. I was like, what is this?
That would just throw me off the
That was just completely annoying. When I first read this story, all the way back in 2012, and I got to this chapter, I was like, what the hell am I reading? Because I had trouble reading it because everything was so underlined. So it was like, I kept losing track.
Yeah, I don't really blame you for that one.
Yeah, I mean, oh god. There's that. That's literally the only problem with grammars, and that's like, there's bad, and then there's this. Pacing. The only problem I had with the original story, you can go back. Right. I just wanted to show you that. The only problem I had with the original story was during the tag team or multi-man matches. It was kind of paced really clunkily. It kept skipping stuff. It was really weird. I'm happy to say that the pacing is better tightened on this story. It flows much better, especially during the multi-man matches, where, thank God, the author kind of wanted to fix that. So I'm happy about that. We actually have actual storyline outside of the ring, so it's like we have, with the fact it's one coherent storyline, we have much better pacing over how the characters work and how they interact, and it reads so much better. Again, I can't really fault Storm Warning because of how it works, because it's a wrestling. There's going to be multiple storylines. In that sort of weird sense, it works. But this one is much better in that regards overall. However, I'm going to be bringing this up in a little bit, but this ties into bungling Billy Rose's character. I think Jay Wigner's completely screwed the pooch on the antagonist. So let me just segue into what I recommended and, the whole final act. So, would I recommend this story? I actually would, very somewhat hesitantly. I don't like the antagonist, but overall, it does a lot of stuff well enough that it kind of differentiates itself from Storm Warning. While Storm Warning is a good wrestling fan fiction, Raging Storm is a good fan fiction in general. I'm not gonna fault it for that, but I have to be safe. Favorite part. The Hell in a Cell match. The very last chapter. I'm going to go back to an old fan fiction I reviewed. Fusion of Destinies 2. I mentioned how Valkyrie, the villain of that story, was built up to be completely amazing. It's like my expectations were sky high, and I got like a middling end fight. It's like, what the hell is this? This is just a letdown. But even I have to admit, I kind of had partially the author's fault for kind of bungling the final fight, but it's mostly on my fault for expecting way too much to a story that it's pretty obvious was going to go to a third act. And the real final fight was going to be in that story when it eventually comes out. This is the opposite. And this kind of ties in to what would I do to fix it. The problem with Billy Rose is the author decided to go back to status quo and try and go back to classic WWE tropes. You made a classic chicken shit heel, constantly foiled by the face. You pretty much made a cheaper version of Steve Austin versus Mr. McMahon, and that's not really a good idea. Bringing in Brick, which is okay. You have a big guy kind of who hilariously enough, through the power of hindsight, Jay Wagner completely unintentionally created the concept of Braun Strowman in like 2001. It's like, hey, this is a guy whose whole gimmick is I'm gonna break shit, I'm gonna destroy shit, and then about 15 years later, Braun Strowman comes out of the street, and his whole gimmick is I'm gonna break everything. Oh. Oh, I just like that little bit of irony that I can just easily picture Vince McMahon saying, I need a gimmick for this guy. What's his name? His name is Braun Strowman. Here's a story for, what is this? It's called Raging Storm. It's a fan fiction. Read about this guy named Brick. He likes to destroy stuff willy-nilly, and he's 7'1", and his gimmick is he breaks stuff. Yeah. That's genius! Why didn't I think of it? Wait, I did, because I'm Vince McMahon! No chance, that's what you got. I like wrestling way too much. Oh, I like wrestling way too much for that. So anyway, back on topic. With that really weird Vince McMahon impersonation. The difference between Billy Rose Storm and Billy Rose and Valkyrie is more or less like mirror images of each other. Valkyrie was I put too much expectations, and it underdelivered. But the Billy Rose Storm fight over-delivered. Now there's a difference between under-delivering and over-delivering. Under-delivering, you can either use as a plot point, saying that you didn't really beat me, I just let you win and stuff like that. The reader could have put in too much expectations for the fight, depending on how well written the fight is. They could be used as a sequel hook, which is what happened in Fusion of Destinies 2. However, on the other hand, anytime you over-deliver on a fight, that's more or less the fault of the author, who literally wrote himself in a corner. So what happened was, you have Billy Rose, who is a psychological mastermind, who's basically trying to just run away from one specific wrestler to get a psychological edge over him. And then after a little bit, it just turns into Storm constantly kicking Billy Rose's ass over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, with no real reason behind it. Now, part of it has to do with the fact that this is technically a shared universe. Jay Wigner had a series of stories with another author named Boulder, and Boulder kind of deleted his story, so I don't know the whole story. For all I know, I'm missing half the story. Now, if the author redid the story, he would have to clean up that part, get rid of all mentions of Viper, stuff like that, and make Billy Rose more threatening to really exemplify the Hell in a Cell encounter. And I think, as it stands right now, Winger actually kind of knew he wrote himself in a corner regarding Billy Rose, because of the simple fact Billy Rose became completely toothless. I mean, he was constantly stumped over and over, yet he constantly bragged about how he's the mental elite, which would be fine if it was a regular feud, but this was considered in the story, in the context of a story, as pretty much a blood feud that crossed multiple promotions, that basically amounted to Storm wanting to get revenge for Billy Rose, not only on himself, but to get vengeance on everyone that Billy Rose has humiliated, tortured, screwed over in the old promotion, and just wanting to get some kind of cathartic release. But it's like, I don't really like that because of how neutered Billy Rose was over the course of the story. He kept trying to rehabilitate him, but he kept getting his ass whipped over and over and over again. And even Brick near the end is like, you kept making too many mistakes with Brick, who was built up as the muscle. So it's like, you kind of, not even like halfway, like Brick was already neutered as well. So I'm like, what is going on here? Like I said, part of this has to do with Boulder stories not being online anymore, meaning, for all we know, he could be more devious and dangerous if I read both authors, but with only one half of it, I'm kind of limited right here, so I can only read what I'm based on. And what I think happened was, when the author completed, probably Boulder stopped the wrestling fan fictions prior to the Hell in a Cell match. He realized he kind of goofed up. He realized, the stories are gone. I have to finish this somehow. So he over-delivered on the Hell in a Cell match. But when you have an entire chapter literally dedicated to the Hell in a Cell match, and there is no two ways around it. My favorite part is literally the entire final chapter, the Hell in a Cell encounter. It over-delivered to the point, it's like, the Hell in a Cell match was the only reason why I recommend this story. I think overall, Storm Warning, the first story, is a much better overall story, but I can't deny that Raging Storm had its moments, especially the Hell in a Cell. Basically, there was so much, it was so built up, that even when I first read this, I kind of had a feeling it was going to go to Hell in a Cell. Because I think, what match could I think of at that point in time that would kind of warrant a feud of this matter? So there's only two matches that really came to mind, which was a 3 stages of hell match and a Hell in a Cell match. So I didn't know which one was gonna go worst. So I was leaning more towards Hell in a Cell. And I think if there's any singular reason to read the story, it's Hell in a Cell. Winger nailed that story. That one chapter saved the entire story as it is. Until Boulder, Winger actually asked Boulder, said, "Hey, can you re-upload the stories somehow? Just forget about them afterwards. Just re-upload them for a month or two, so other people can read them and enjoy them." Hey. Then we might get the full picture. But right now, all I can see is a complete and utter over-delivered that had Winger tried to redeem himself, and his very shoddy writing of Billy Rose as an antagonist just to try and end out on a high. And I think Jay Winger kind of nailed that in that regard. I still think the Hell in a Cell match between Rose and Storm is probably one of my favorite fan fiction moments ever. One of my favorite moments. Not even fan fiction, in literature in general. I mean, it's up there. It's completely up there. I think it's actually one of my favorite. I think it is my favorite moment in fan fiction. Period. While Rose may not be my favorite antagonist, at least the story ended up really, really damn high. So anything I would do to fix the story. First off, completely overhaul the story. This would probably be more of a reboot than anything else. Reboot the story so none of Boulder's characters are in the context of the story. So, Viper, Viper, all them, all the Venom guys, they're gone. Just leave the characters there. Storm, Rain, Zeta and Zed, all of them, they stay. Bill, all of them stay. Fix Chapter 16. Seriously, what the hell is up with... Oh my god. Seriously, what the hell is up with Chapter 16? That's really, really weird. Make Rose more of an engaging antagonist. You can't completely... In this type of story, you had to have built it up. You can't build him up immediately and then completely render him toothless for pretty much the rest of the story. Really? And even at the beginning of the story, he was pretty toothless already. It's just... you got that. It's the only time he was even remotely dangerous was when Storm was out with an injury. That would be it. And even then, he went immediately back to being toothless right after it completely... come on. It was completely... His character was completely ruined. So, that's my review on Raging Storm. Do you agree with the review? Who knows? Maybe you will, maybe you won't. So this has been Dark Symphony 777, and cut.